Okay. So the first question is, how have you allowed your first students' voice to change what you teach and how you teach it?
So in my classroom, we talk about respecting others a lot because of what we have, the positive behavior system we have in place, and what respect looks like from different points of view. So I know that one student was having a disagreement with another student, and she was trying to talk to her about it, but it got into like a fight sort of. And so this person was talking to another person, and they said, well, you should apologize, blah, blah, blah. And she went and did apologize. And what she said was, that's just how we talk in my family. And I have a really hard time changing how I act at home to how I talk at home to how I talk at school. And so that just sparked a really good conversation of what that sounds like, because it sparked a conversation of, we talk about different things at home than we do at school. And some people at home were raised differently than we were. And so there's lots of things that are different from home to school. And sometimes it's hard you shouldn't separate it, is what I said. You shouldn't separate it. You should try to include it.
Yeah.
And so what are some things that you can include or talk about? How can you change that if you want it to be changed? So as far as the way I teach, well, when I have ELL kids in my class, one time recently, there's an option to speak in Spanish, to have it to speak Spanish. And I said to the student, okay, I know that Spanish is spoken in your home. Do you speak Spanish? And he said, no, but my mom does. And I said, okay, do you understand Spanish? No, because I had overheard the parent talking to the student in Spanish. So I thought, okay, maybe he will understand this better if it's in Spanish. But so I said, I want you to listen to it in English. If you feel that you don't quite understand and you think that you would understand it better in the Spanish, then listen to the Spanish, but only if you think it's going to help you.
Yeah.
Another student 2 years ago, when he came, he was from Vietnam, and he didn't speak any English at all, and didn't write. So I had asked another student who spoke Vietnamese, how to best help him. And I asked about just the letter system. So if he's learning to read and write here in our country, how different is that from your country? Because I didn't know. And so I printed off the alphabet and had him work with the other student
to compare.
And I said, will you just ask him if he knows these letter sounds? So I had another student help with that as well.
But that also probably gave that other student some confidence, being that helper.
And I did use Google Translate when I was trying to read a test to him. So I read a test into Google Translate. I read the question and it translated it and showed it to him. I don't know how much it helped, but
it's what we had as a resource. So can you share how you work with students to link prior knowledge to the learning taking place in our classroom? So you kind of talked about that with the prior knowledge with the alphabet already. Is there another example?
Let me see. Say that one more time.
So linking prior knowledge.
Well, I ask students, I try to use real world examples, and how I've learned over the years that real world examples are different for every student, especially with whatever their parent does for a living. And so I try to make a connection that way. So for one student one year, it was, well, my dad works on cars. So I had to tie whatever I was talking about to, I know that's not necessarily their
prior knowledge, but
their heritage, but prior knowledge does go with that.
Absolutely.
Like, do you think that what did you need to know? Because he had low confidence. So, well, I know what this tool is. I know what that tool is. I know this, that, and the other thing. I said, do you think anybody else knows that? Probably not. I'm like, so you have knowledge. How can we show that when you use this tool, what does it do? You have to use those same kind of tools at school.
Yeah.
So what can you use to help you with that. So I would say that, and the
Okay.
alphabet.
Yeah. How does the teaching and learning experience in your classroom rigorously engage students of diverse backgrounds?
Um, well, I hold my students all to high expectations, no matter where they come from. I try to explain to them that I teach math and science, so sometimes math is not everyone's favorite subject, and it was not mine either. But I try to tell them that just because you don't know it now doesn't mean you won't know it. And so everybody takes a little bit longer to learn things. Some kids need pictures, some kids don't. So we try to, I try to get kids to understand that you are going to be challenged. I do expect you to do better, or not to do better, but to do well. And in order to do that, you have to take part in the learning. You can't just sit and listen. So whatever this person's doing, you should be doing it too. And then they talk about it and
Yeah.
try to figure it out together.
Yeah. How do you ensure that all students are engaged in their lessons?
This is a hard one, especially now because of online learning
Yes.
and students in the classroom as well. Because of culture, things are different. So what we do at home is not always the same as how we do it at school. And you don't ever want to tell someone that what they're doing at home is wrong, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's what they do at home. So what we do at school looks different, and it's going to be different. So you can do that when you're at home, but when you're at school, we're going to do this. So engagement, I would say, when they're at home and they're doing their at home, when things are different at home, it's hard to get them to engage in school when they're not in school.
Yeah.
When we're in school, I think a lot of it comes with having conversations with their peers, and having peers explain to them their way of thinking, because everybody has a different thought process. And when they work together, I think that helps overcome the challenges, and everybody can play a part and feel successful to their level and then, collaborate as a team.
What do you see as the most challenging aspect of an increasingly diverse education environment? And what steps have you taken or plan to take to meet these challenges?
So right now, one of the challenges I've noticed at our school is that there's not a lot of pictorial representation of the diversity at our school.
I agree.
I've been here for 15 years, and we were always diverse, but now it's a different demographic.
It's changing.
It's changing, and I have more ELL students in my classroom this year than I ever have. There's a lot in third grade, and we have to know that that's how it is. So they're not the ones that need to change. We need to change what we're doing. But especially, like, how can you feel welcome and included if you don't see yourself?
Exactly.
I feel like we have library books that are good, but when they walk in, you need to feel welcome. And so, like, I feel like our entryway should say hello in every language possible, and stencils all over the wall. I think as we're walking down the hallway, there needs to be pictures of people who have done wonderful things from different cultures, so that
I agree.
students see that could be them.
One of my old schools that I student taught in, they had a language of the day. So in the front,
I love
at
that.
car duty, like by our flagpole, they had basically a flower plant, and they turned it around. Today's language is Spanish, and it said how you greet and say goodbye to people. You say hola. And so when they greeted them at the car that day, every single adult said hola. And then they started getting increasingly better, and they would ask, how are you? And it's not to learn the language. It's simply to
make them feel welcome.
Because they had that school was bilingual. So it included that culture. And then some days it was English. They actually included French one day and German, but they started just learning all those different greetings. And you did it in the class too. continued, and the teacher greeted them at the class with that language of the day. On the announcements, that
Good
was the language.
morning.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And I think
An
that goes along
easy
with it.
thing to include.
Super simple, and it gets just everybody exposed to that language too. How do you adapt your teaching to meet different cultures and learning styles for your students?
Well, we have personalized learning here in Klein and at our campus. I have included probably this year more than any year. I used to steer away because students couldn't really understand a video that was maybe of someone from another country who has an accent. And I started to think that, you know what, they need to be exposed to that.
Yep.
And so some more of my videos have been not just of people with no accent, it's been, some videos where they have a Spanish accent or a French accent, Canadian accents, because it doesn't matter if you could be from another country or you could be from across the street. And it could sound different. So
Math is still the same.
math is still the same. Well, almost.
Some of it.
Almost.
Some of it,
Yeah.
That's kind of cool about that. What experiences have you had that have helped you understand the impact of race, culture, and ethnicity on teaching and learning?
What have I gone through?
What has helped you understand the impact?
Okay, so this is a long time ago.
Okay.
I grew up in there was no diversity where I grew up. It was a smaller unincorporated town, and my elementary school was K through 6. There was not a single African-American student in my school or in any of my classes. There were very few other cultures. There were some Muslim culture, but not very many others.
Yeah.
And then when it became my time to go to junior high, because we were unincorporated, there was no junior high for this unincorporated town that I lived in. So all of my friends from that primarily white school went to the primarily white middle school. And my community was bused not 30 miles, probably 15 miles to another part of town that I had never been to before. And that school was primarily African American and Latin American students, Laotian. That was the first experience I had with that. And so walking into that, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm out of my element, and
Culture shock.
I don't know what to do. I don't know how to interact. I don't, and you click over to the people I got off the bus with, that I follow those people I got off the bus with. And eventually, I had interactions with so many people from different cultures and backgrounds. That was probably the best life experience I had because I was immersed.
Yes.
And I felt uncomfortable.
And you didn't feel like you were the majority. At that
Absolutely.
time, you were probably the minority, and you have some empathy for what their culture might be going through in today's time.
Absolutely. So when I look back on that, especially with what's happened this past summer, I thought about all of my experiences during that time.
Yeah.
And I contacted some people from there to let them know, hey, you had a huge impact on me because you changed how I thought. We had conversations, you helped me understand. Was it perfect? No, but
No,
I felt like I learned so much from you, and I have continued to carry that with me as I enter this door every single day.
I wish I had an experience like that, because I feel like I have empathy towards it, but I've never been having to experience it in the same way. So I almost wish I had an experience so that I could relate a little bit better. But I never wish it on anybody at the same time.
Right.
So you actually answered that question. So discuss how you feel about students' life and culture. How will you show an interest in their activities and successes?
I had a conversation with my student not too long ago. I was asking about holidays, or not like holidays, but are there days that you recognize because of a person? who did something great, where, it was a very free conversation about where are you from? And he told me, well, I'm from here, but my mom and dad are from Pakistan. And I said, oh, really? So do they speak a different language? Yes. I said, do they speak Farsi or do they speak Urdu? And he looked at me like,
You
they,
know
they
that?
speak Urdu. And I said, oh, okay. I've had a couple of students who have spoken Urdu. I can't speak it. Um, does it use the same alphabet as, those are my questions. Like, do the
Yeah.
letters look the same? Do the letters sound the same?
They're
And he
teaching
said, oh
you.
no, they're totally different. And I said, well, I would love it if you wrote my name in Urdu. I would just love to see what it looked
Yeah.
like. So he didn't do it, but I'll ask
Hopefully.
him again. But
Yeah.
so I try to have those kind of
Yeah.
conversations so that they feel comfortable with me for when I do challenge them.
Uh-huh.
It's,
You have that
I have a
relationship with them.
relationship with them.
That's like super cool though, like bringing their culture into it to build a relationship too. So what are some of the benefits of racial and ethnic diversity in curriculum?
I think there's a lot of benefit. I think there's a lot of hurdles that have to be overcome in order to even be for it to enter the curriculum.
Yes.
I think it should never be a separate curriculum.
Yep.
So it's a shame that that's what we're current, and it should never be questionable.
Yes.
Am I supposed to teach this?
Can I teach it?
Can I teach it?
Is it appropriate?
And it's been hard to watch what's going on in the news because it's been told that it isn't appropriate to talk about the differences. And I think that that is going to make our job even all that much harder.
Agreed.
So I think it's a huge challenge. But I feel that it's important.
Mm-hmm. We had to do a project for one of my classes, and we took a teak and we had to review it, and then we had to change it so it was culturally responsive. And I was looking at my personal social studies teaks, and there was only one African American. And when it came to Native American groups, it just said you can teach these, but it wasn't required. It didn't tell me exactly what tribes I should teach and be inclusive to Texas. It didn't give me any people of color. And I know for a fact there were African Americans and a huge Hispanic
Cowboys.
culture
Mm-hmm.
in Texas. That's
Mm-hmm.
how we got the name Tejas.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there was only one Hispanic is just almost mind blowing.
And false.
And that we are very
Quick to believe whatever is in our curriculum and our
Absolutely.
social studies books and whatever, so that it makes it even that more challenging.
I mean, it's very much white teaching,
Mhm.
and it is super unfair to those cultures that aren't represented.
Mhm.
Just a couple more. What experiences have you had that have helped you understand? Oh, we've already done that one. Hello. What kind of experiences have you had in relating with students whose backgrounds are different than your own?
So when I talk to them about expectations in school, I tell them about my experience with my father and how my father's expectations were huge. And my mom always said, just do your best. My dad was, if you get a grade below a B, you're grounded or whatever. I've pulled out my report card from second grade because I teach third grade. And so, I'm constantly redirecting kids. They're talking, they're out of their seat, they're messy. But then I show them my report card and I say, I think I'm more like you than you think, because I got, a check. A check wasn't a good thing. A check was a bad thing. If I have a check under, doesn't turn in work on time, doesn't talk successively. I got those same marks that my kids did.
Yeah.
And that's my experience. That's not necessarily, well, it is a cultural experience
It
because
is.
that's what I knew. Culture is what you know,
Yep.
and that's what I grew up with. So I share that with them so that they realize that, you may not, some families want you to do school, but doing awesome at school isn't a high priority. And I can't, that's not up to me,
Mhm.
but I can challenge you. And I'm going to.
Yeah.
So But yeah, I share my report card and they think it's
That's
pretty
actually
funny.
kind of fun because I was that social butterfly was always written on mine. And I'm always a little bit more hard on my social butterflies because I'm like, I know it's hard, but you've got to control yourself because it's going to help you in the long run. I kind of want to see if my mom still has mine.
I've
That'd be
also
interesting.
pulled up my, gone onto Google Earth
Uh-huh.
and I've typed in my old address and just so that they can see where I grew up and what it looked
Oh, that's
like.
fun.
Because, you know, a lot of kids don't play outside anymore. That I'm like, oh, I used to build forts. What's a fort? I'm like, oh my gosh.
We were used to be able to ride
We
our
had to be
bikes.
out the door. Don't come back until, you know, it's time to eat. And
Yep.
so we would go out and we would play and we would build forts. And they were like, well, that doesn't make any sense. How could you do that?
We
There's
would,
no, well, there's no trees around
yeah.
here. So I just showed them a totally different world. They're like, oh my gosh.
In the Midwest, they have like huge trees that you could actually climb branches on. But here in Texas, the pine trees are so tall. So when I say I used to climb trees as a kid, they're like,
I said that this week
they
too.
they see something different, and I'm like, well, no, the limbs are lower down, and they're like, how did you not break it? Well, they're thinking of the tiny trees that have limbs, and so that actually might be a good idea to pull up my old house with that giant tree in the front yard.
And then some of them will say, hey, where can you go to Pakistan? Can you go to here? Can you go to
Yeah.
there? And we have, you know, if we can spell, we try as best we can. But
Yeah.
then it's awesome because it turns the world, and then it takes you there. So, and then it shows you what the landscape is like.
That's so
So,
cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.